It's quite noticeable that Maximus struggles to be accepted by the Brotherhood of Steel. He is regularly beaten and degraded by the members of the Brotherhood and given the low-ranking menial tasks like cleaning the latrine, while everyone else gets to explore the wasteland. This is before he gets in trouble, too. Maximus is constantly being degraded by the faction he is a part of, so it seems pretty obvious they were going for some kind of racial allegory. If this was the intention, it backfired because they put too much emphasis on him struggling, to the point that one of the few black characters are both weak-willed and of weak character. And the other prominent black character is a diabolical corporate mastermind, which, when I think about it, was quite ill-conceived. Maximus is sent on an expedition to find pre-war technology that will decide the fate of the wasteland. In other words, the MacGuffin. Maximus' superior, Knight Titus, treats him like a pack mule and makes him do trivial errands just to assert his authority. Titus repeatedly dismisses Maximus and disregards his livelihood when sending him to scout out an area. This is when a mutated bear called the Yaogwai sneaks up on Knight Titus and attacks him. Now, they call it a bear in the Fallout TV show, and they missed the perfect opportunity to let the audience know that the mutated bears are called Yaogwai. And this is because the Yaogwai were called that by Chinese prisoners in pre-war internment camps, because they reminded them of the mythological demon in Chinese mythology. So anyways, Maximus eventually shoots the bear, although he's hesitant. Titus is left wounded and incapacitated by the attack, demanding Maximus give him a stim pack and heal his wounds, while hurling vitriol and ranting about how worthless he is. Titus then threatens Maximus that the Brotherhood of Steel will brutally execute him for his incompetence. Maximus decides this was the last straw and allows Titus to slowly bleed out and die, and then take his power armor. Maximus allowing Titus to die is portrayed as justified and a cathartic triumph over the many injustices Maximus endures. When he dons the armor, it represents that he is no longer oppressed because he stopped conforming and defied the system of oppression he was a part of. Only by blatantly defying his oppressors and forging his own path can he finally reclaim what was denied from him by the community whom he was shunned from. I see what they were going for, but I find that Maximus letting Titus die out of spite and stealing his power armor was in poor taste. Again, Maximus's actions are portrayed as this cathartic triumph. Let me be frank. Maximus, a black man, commits manslaughter and essentially murders Titus and steals his armor. It is implied that the only way Maximus could acquire that armor, which is only given to those that are promoted, was through murdering someone and stealing that symbol of prestige. Do you not see how bad this looks? There are cases where the writing ends up becoming self-defeating. And this happens often. And don't forget that Emil Pagliarulo claimed the protagonist of Fallout 4 also shot a Canadian rebel during the annexation of Canada before the war, making him a war criminal. Now, I think this could have been handled a lot better, without just outright committing manslaughter and stealing his armor. Perhaps Maximus decides to make an ultimatum, claiming that he'll heal Titus if he's allowed to go AWOL. What follows is a montage where Maximus is finally in the position of power instead of the position of the oppressed, and he plays around with the power armor like a child plays with a toy truck. Later on in the series, Maximus finds raiders messing with his power armor he left in the outskirts of the town of Philly. Maximus isn't a naive vault dweller like Lucy, so I don't understand what he was thinking when he left his power armor, which is one of the most sought after things in the setting, as well as all his weapons and equipment. He could have at least kept something on him while going to Philly in case he was mugged, especially since he's outright wearing a Brotherhood of Steel Squire uniform, and become the target of an opportunist who would hold him for ransom for the chance to gain access to Brotherhood technology, or even a wastelander resentful of Brotherhood occupation. What ensues is Maximus awkwardly approaching the raiders in a fight that can only be described as slapstick comedy. Luckily, they don't have firearms, or somehow they can't find his equipment that he left in broad daylight. So he attempts to attack them, and he is beaten to a pulp, and he's knocked out. Then they go back to trying to grab the power armor, and luckily they don't just outright kill him in the scuffle. But anyways, he gets up and grabs a toilet seat, a wooden toilet seat, and then a tire iron, I think. And then he suddenly becomes a seasoned fighter in a trope that I would call him not holding back. We see this often in media where a character will be seemingly weak, but the reveal is that they were holding back the entire time. But it doesn't feel earned. It feels more like an excuse. In fact, all the main characters excel at everything. All the characters in general, are both professional martial artists and sharpshooters, and can just go Super Saiyan whenever the plot demands it. I'm not saying... Obviously, my issue with Maximus is that he's generally an incompetent character. I'd like him to, have his moments, but I don't want him to be a jack of all trades either. But even then, they really squander this moment with his character, because then he's eventually beaten down again, and the raiders push him into the power armor they have spent all this time trying to gain access to. And of course, Maximus uses this opportunity to crush one of the skulls of one of the raiders and kills the other raider. Eventually, the Squire Maximus orders arrives, and it happens to be one of his bullies who would beat on him. Maximus awkwardly holds his hand over him. I need to emphasize how awkward this looks. His hands were bloody from the recently crushed raider skull. The Squire kneels and cowers over him, and the camera shows Maximus holding back laughter like a kid pretending to be a dinosaur. Maximus learns more about his bully and finds out that he grew up being force-fed on a farm to make fertilizer, which is strange given the social commentary surrounding Maximus. Him and Knight Titus were friends, and when they entered the Brotherhood, they were also bullied. And so they used Maximus as a scapegoat for the bullying, so then his friend Titus wouldn't be bullied. Then the camera shows a pensive Maximus, which I can only hope was him reflecting on how he was becoming the very bullies he hates. Actually, he became more than just a bully because he murdered someone and took his armor, and now he's impersonating him to his friend. But I digress. It seemed like Maximus was actually experiencing character development and a little empathy. Or at least that's what I thought. Eventually, Maximus comes clean. After branding and commiserating over their recent victories, Titus's friend even takes to calling each other the T-Boys, only to realize in horror that his friend's murderer, who stole the honor of his friend knighting him, is now masquerading as his friend's corpse. Then Titus's friend fights Maximus, shocked by his betrayal. He should have never trusted one of his fellow oppressors. After Maximus allowed Titus to die and leaving his body to rot while he abandoned the mission to take a joyride in his armor, and then proceeded to abuse his friend in impersonating him and only revealing everything after branding him. How could he? I can't believe I'm just realizing this, but the branding ritual, the fact that they are branding people to show that they're knights, the branding ritual, it seems to have racial connotations, and it adds credence to the idea that this is supposedly racial commentary. And then Maximus reclaiming his dignity by branding one of his bullies shows that he's overcoming his oppression. But if they were going with that, that kind of falls flat because the branding ritual happens to everyone. It doesn't just happen to black people. And if it wasn't this contrived racial allegory, then it was ill-conceived to have Maximus be branded to begin with, for what I hope are obvious reasons. Okay, maybe I should explain because I haven't seen this idea anywhere else. The branding someone who was the member of a race who has experienced historical slavery and having them be branded is insensitive. So again, if this wasn't some kind of racial commentary, which would still be insensitive, then it was just plain insensitive to have the Brotherhood brand other people. And if it was racial commentary, then the fact that everyone is being branded defeats that purpose. Also, to begin with, the Brotherhood have never branded people until this TV series. In fact, the Brotherhood is a lot less fanatical in 4, and they weren't even fanatical at all in the other games. They would just keep to themselves and gather technology. I still can't believe that the most marketable part of the games is being deliberately demonized and being turned into the antagonist. I almost forgot about the part where in Vault 4, Maximus, out of a misunderstanding, thinks that Lucy is in danger and tries to save her and starts fighting people in power armor. It's okay to have a character who makes a few mistakes, but the fact that he makes these really foolish choices so often, it makes the character veer into the comedic idiot character. Lucy was the one who was sentenced to leave the vault, and yet Maximus follows Lucy anyways, even though he enjoyed the luxuries of the vault, and also implicitly was okay with the questionable means by which the vault provided those luxuries. Maximus was enthralled by all of the creature comforts of the vault, and there was an entire montage about this, and yet he suddenly decides that he's just going to follow Lucy. And this might be okay, but everything that we've seen so far is just adding to his lack of or poor character. So it seems like he's just this house pet that just always has to follow Lucy and just does, who just follows Lucy and does whatever she wants. Regardless of whether there is this overarching theme about oppression, specifically with Maximus, I can't entirely discount the rest of the show, which I might go into later. After Maximus and Lucy leave the vault, Maximus suddenly decides this is the perfect time to confess to all of his crimes of him stealing the power armor and killing one of his fellow knights, and attempting to kill one of his squires, which was the knight's best friend. And Lucy then explains that she also is guilty of some horrible things too, or really just one specific horrible thing. And I'll probably get into that later in another video. The issue is Maximus is acting like a child who suddenly, at the last second, without any awareness for the delivery of his confession, suddenly decides at an awkward time to confess. He also stole the fusion core from Vault 4, which compounds all of his other mistakes and transgressions. Why are they making this character steal so often? Why are they making him steal everything? And instead of taking personal responsibility and taking the initiative, Lucy has to explain that what he's doing is wrong and patronizingly tells him to return the fusion core. So he didn't even have the integrity to go to the vault on his own. He had to be told to return the fusion core. Maximus learns to be a better person by giving back the fusion coil that he stole in Vault 4, but it doesn't feel earned because Lucy had to tell him to do that. He didn't do that of his own free will. And the fact that he has to be lectured, for him to finally, stop stealing things, it makes the character seem even more immature than they already were. And I was thinking that at least there was some semblance of salvaging this character. And I thought it was okay that they had him walking away from the power armor, and that symbolized him moving on from the Brotherhood. But at the end of the season, his friend convinces the Brotherhood of Steel that he killed Moldaver. And because of this, everyone cheers him on and they revere him now. And he's wearing the power armor again. So it's going back into how he's oppressed and he's finally gaining back the power that he deserves because he's oppressed. It's awkward that they're having Maximus confess so late into the season. It almost feels like it was an afterthought and they realized that Maximus needs his redemption arc right now, and they just need to find some way to resolve it really quickly. Even though the gravity of his actions necessitates that he needs a much longer redemption arc, and that the fact that he didn't confess earlier just adds another sign of his poor character. The biggest issue I have is that they should have made Maximus like a strong character. Make him, a black character. He's strong. He's not, just forget about the whole oppression narrative, okay? It's demoralizing. We should just have a black guy who, he's competent, he's tough, he's strong. That's what I really want the most of all of this.